World War II did not begin overnight, but the world truly felt its shock on September 1st, 1939, when Adolf Hitler launched a brutal invasion of Poland, using blitzkrieg tactics that combined tanks, aircraft, and fast-moving infantry to overwhelm defenses in days. And just 2 days later, Neville Chamberlain and Britain, alongside France, declared war on Germany, marking the official start of a global conflict that would engulf continents and reshape history. Poland fell swiftly, divided between Nazi Germany and the Soviet Union under a secret pact, and soon after, in 1940, Hitler turned west, launching lightning invasions of Denmark and Norway to secure strategic positions, followed by a devastating campaign against Belgium, the Netherlands, and France, where the German army bypassed strong defenses like the Maginot Line and forced a humiliating French surrender, while British troops narrowly escaped annihilation during the dramatic evacuation at Dunkirk, a moment that would become symbolic of survival against impossible odds. As Europe trembled under Nazi dominance, the skies above Britain became the next battlefield in the Battle of Britain, where the Royal Air Force resisted relentless bombing by the German Luftwaffe, preventing a planned invasion and marking Hitler's first major defeat, while at the same time, in 1941, the war expanded dramatically when Germany launched Operation Barbarossa, the largest invasion in history, against the Soviet Union, breaking the non-aggression pact and opening a brutal eastern front that would consume millions of lives. Cities like Leningrad were besieged, Moscow threatened, and the vast Russian winter began to cripple German forces, turning what was meant to be a swift victory into a deadly quagmire. Meanwhile, the conflict became truly global on December 7th, 1941, when attack on Pearl Harbor shocked the United States as Japanese aircraft launched a surprise strike on the American naval base in Hawaii, destroying ships and killing thousands, prompting Franklin D. Roosevelt to declare war on Japan, and shortly after, Germany declared war on the United States, bringing the full industrial power of America into the conflict, shifting the balance of war forever. In the Pacific, Japan rapidly expanded across Southeast Asia and the Pacific Islands, capturing territories and resources, but its advance was halted in 1942 at the Battle of Midway, where American forces dealt a devastating blow to the Japanese Navy, sinking key aircraft carriers and turning the tide in the Pacific theater. While in North Africa, British forces under Bernard Montgomery clashed with German forces led by Erwin Rommel, known as the Desert Fox, culminating in the Battle of El Alamein, a turning point that pushed Axis forces back and secured Allied control of the region. On the Eastern Front, one of the most brutal battles in history unfolded at Stalingrad, where Soviet forces encircled and defeated an entire German army in early 1943, marking a decisive turning point that shattered the myth of German invincibility and began a relentless Soviet push westward, while at the same time, Allied forces launched an invasion of Italy, forcing Benito Mussolini from power and opening another front in Europe, though fierce resistance slowed progress through the mountainous terrain. As the Allies prepared for the final push into Nazi-occupied Europe, one of the most significant events of the war took place on June 6, 1944, known as D-Day, when Allied forces launched a massive amphibious invasion of Normandy, involving thousands of ships and aircraft, establishing a foothold in France despite heavy casualties, and from there, they began the liberation of Western Europe, pushing German forces back toward their homeland. While in the east, the Soviet Red Army continued its advance, capturing territory and crushing resistance. In late 1944, Germany launched a desperate counteroffensive in the Battle of the Bulge, surprising Allied forces in the Ardennes forest, but despite initial success, the offensive ultimately failed, draining Germany's remaining strength and accelerating its collapse, and as 1945 began, Allied forces closed in on Germany from both east and west, bombing cities and advancing rapidly, while inside Berlin, Hitler's regime began to crumble, and on April 30th, 1945, Adolf Hitler took his own life in a bunker as Soviet forces entered the city. Just days later, on May 8th, 1945, known as VE Day, Germany officially surrendered, bringing the war in Europe to an end, but the conflict in the Pacific continued as Japan refused to surrender despite mounting losses, and in a move that would forever change warfare, the United States dropped atomic bombs on the cities of Hiroshima and Nagasaki in August 1945, unleashing unprecedented destruction and forcing Japan to reconsider its position. And on September 2, 1945, Japan formally surrendered aboard the USS Missouri, marking the end of World War II. Throughout these events, the war saw unimaginable destruction, including the Holocaust, where millions of Jews and other minorities were systematically murdered by the Nazi regime. Entire cities were reduced to rubble by bombing campaigns, and tens of millions of lives were lost across the globe. But from the ashes of war emerged a new world order, with the formation of the United Nations aimed at preventing future conflicts, and the beginning of the Cold War between former allies, setting the stage for decades of geopolitical tension. From the invasion of Poland to the surrender of Japan, these 30 key events tell the story of a war that reshaped nations, redrew borders, and changed humanity forever. A conflict defined by courage, tragedy, innovation, and the enduring struggle between tyranny and freedom, leaving lessons that continue to echo through history today.